Hello and welcome to the program. Our today's topic is functions of education with respect to acquaintance with cultural heritage, transmission and preservation. The objectives set for the topic are to become familiar with the concept of education, to get acquainted with the functions of education, to become familiar with the concept of cultural heritage, to have a look over the salient features of cultural heritage, to get acquainted with the education as an agent of preserving and transmitting culture. In the words of Golda Meir, the purpose of education is to civilize the thousands of barbarians that are born into this world every hour. If education fails to bring change in the learner, then it is worthless. Education is considered the most powerful tool in bringing change in man. On one hand, education acculturates an individual. On the other hand, it preserves, transmits and develops the culture of a society. In short, education and culture are mutually interdependent, complementary and supplementary in all their aspects and activities. Thus, the relation between education and culture is inseparable. Culture plays a vital role in man's life. Education of various elements of culture can help man in adaptation of the natural and social environment, development of individual's personality, socialization of individual, proper use of leisure, and understanding other cultures and proper means of liberality. Education in culture is imparting mainly by the family, society, and school. Considering the importance of culture in man's life and the role played by education in the socialization and acculturation of an individual, it is worthwhile to analyze the changes that have taken shape in our culture. Now, concept of education. Education is an effort of the senior people to transfer their knowledge to the younger members of society. It is thus an institution which plays a vital role in integrating an individual with his society and in maintaining the perpetuation of culture. Emile Durkheim defines education as the influence exercised by the adult generation upon those who are not yet ready for adult life. Education in the largest sense is an act or experience that has a formative effect on the mind, character or physical ability of an individual. In its technical sense, education is a process by which society deliberately transmits its accumulated knowledge, skills and values from one generation to another. Education may also be defined as a purposive, conscious or unconscious, psychological, sociological, scientific and philosophical process which brings about the development of the individual to the fullest extent and also the maximum development of society in such a way that both enjoy maximum happiness and prosperity. In short, education is the development of individual according to his needs and demands of society, of which he is an integral part. Through education, people gain knowledge and skills, enabling them to become productive members of society. By educating an individual, we attempt to give him some desirable knowledge, understanding, skills, interest, attitudes, and critical thinking. Thus, education is both unilateral as well as bipolar in nature. It is a continuous process. It is knowledge or experience. It is development of particular aspects of human personality or a harmonious integrated growth. It is conducive for the good of the individual or the welfare of the society. It is a liberal discipline or vocational course. It is stabilizer of social order, conservator of culture, and instrument of change and social reconstruction. Now, functions of education. The functions of education include, first, ability to convert the young blood of the society into the productive and responsible citizens for the country. Second, creating awareness among the individuals regarding their own self and their surroundings so that they can be aware of their problems and can formulate ways to improve the standards of living. Third, create job opportunities and employment which improve per capita income of a country. Fourth, give strength and self-confidence in the nation by means of using education as an important weapon for achieving competence. Fifth, to contribute the development of society by providing skillful individuals to the business and the government organizations. Now, concept of cultural heritage. Heritage in the broadest sense is that which is inherited. Everything which the ancestors bequeath may be called heritage: landscapes, structures, objects, traditions. Heritage is the full range of our inherited traditions, monuments, objects, and culture. Heritage is something that can be passed from one generation to the next, something that can be conserved or inherited, and something that has historic or cultural value. Heritage might be understood to be a physical object, a piece of property, a building, or a place that is able to be owned and passed on to someone else. Cultural heritage is one of the division of heritage. It refers to cultural aspects like heritage sites, monuments, folklores, traditional activities and practices, language, etc. that are considered vital to be preserved for the future generations. It gives people a connection to the certain social values, beliefs, religions, and customs. It allows them to identify with others of similar mindset and backgrounds. Cultural heritage can provide an automatic sense of unity and belonging within a group and allows us to better understand previous generations. Now let's have a look over the salient features of cultural heritage. Our cultural heritage is a highly complex pattern. It has been accumulated for centuries and had spread throughout the length and breadth of India, even to its ancient colonies, Burma and the whole of Indonesia. Coming to us through different ages, it regulates our characteristic way of living. The important characteristics of cultural heritage are: first, implicit faith in God. Belief in the existence of God is the first fundamental of Indian culture. We have implicit faith in the existence of such a divine personality. God is infinite, immanent, external, omnipotent, omniscient, and pure consciousness. God is subtle, essence pervading the whole living and non-living world. He emancipates us from the bondage of dust and gives us the wealth not of the things but of inner light, not of power but of love. Second, faith in spiritualism. In Indian culture, great importance has been given to spiritualism. India's real heritage is spiritual wealth, accumulated during the last 4,000 years. India is the land of religion and spiritualism. Spiritualism gives a real strength to human soul and mind. Spiritualism will end chaos, disorder, destruction, exploitation, selfishness, hatred, and aggression in the world. Spiritual preferences will lead to the better social order, human brotherhood, and finally to the international brotherhood. Third, faith in non-violence. Non-violence is the means to attain the goal of truth. Non-violence implies complete freedom from violence, that is, freedom from hate, anger, fear, vanity, and ill will. Non-violence includes humility, charity, love, patience, purity of heart, and freedom from passion in the thought, word, and action. It purifies the spirit and inspires to love all creatures. Fourth, respect for person. Our sixth sense has in us these noble characteristics. Just as we have certain privileges, others also have the privileges, and we do treat others as rational beings like ourselves. Fifth, faith in tolerance. We have implicit faith in toleration. All other religions believe in proselytism, except in the Hindu religion. We are not bigoted at all. We are rather broad-minded and believe in there are many ways to achieve salvation, sincerity of purpose and purity of heart being the only function. Now, education as an agent of preserving and transmitting cultural heritage. The word culture is most commonly used in three senses: an integral pattern of human knowledge, beliefs, and behavior, excellence of taste in the fine arts and humanities, also known as high culture. The outlook, values, goals, attitude and customs shared by the society. Education in its general sense is a form of learning in which the knowledge, skills and habits of a group of people are transferred from one generation to the next through teaching, training or research. Education frequently takes place under the guidance of others but may also be autodidactic. Any experience that has a formative effect on the way one thinks, feels or acts may be considered educational. For example, if the cultural pattern of a society is materialistic, its educational system will also be framed in the same way. Meaning and concepts of culture testifies to the fact that education and culture are intimately connected. In broader sense, culture is not part of education, but it is education itself. Cultural patterns of a society determines its educational system. Educational system simultaneously affects the culture of that society by shaping and influencing and thinking the behavior of an individual. Similarly, if there is cultural conflict in the society, it can be wiped out only by education. Wherever there are human groups, there is culture, that is a man-made part of environment and learned patterns of behavior. Wherever there is cultural heritage, it is diffused and transmitted to succeeding generations by education. Since human beings live in groups, we might say that wherever there are human beings, there is culture and education is in various forms. School education is limited mainly to literate cultures. The role of education is much smaller in non-literate groups. Just as culture influences education, much is the same way education also exerts a powerful influence upon the culture of a country. Following are the various ways by which education influences the cultural heritage of country. First, preservation of culture. Each country believes and flaunts the superiority of its own culture over the rest. Hence, it tries to preserve its culture in its original form. Education is the only means to complete this task. Thus, education preserves the culture of the society. Conservation of culture is the first and foremost functions of education. Mankind is a species that has predominant opportunities for the conservation of social and cultural heritage. Man has intelligence, power to develop language and preserve culture in the written and unwritten forms. The accumulated culture is being transmitted from generation to generation and it is helping the mankind to improve its conditions of the physical, social, mental, emotional, recreational, creational and aesthetic aspects of life. The whole masses of knowledge, even though conserved, need not to be transmitted to the younger generation. It is the adult generation and plans suitable educational programs for the transmission of such conserved culture. It serves as an instrument for the transmission of conserved culture also. Second, transmission of culture. The process of preservation includes the process of transmission as well. Transmission of culture from one generation to another is the best guarantee of its preservation. In the words of Ottaway, the famous sociologist, the function of education is to transmit the social values and the ideas to the young and capable members of society. The education not only helps in transmission of cultural heritage to the rising generation, it also trains children in a manner that they enrich and modify that heritage through their own efforts and thus help in the establishment of a better and happier society. Thus, education performs the important function of constantly reorganizing and reconstructing human experiences for the promotion of culture and civilization. Third, development of culture. The function of education is to bring about the need and desirable change in the cultural ideas and values for the progress and continued development of society, without which social progress will stratify and come to naught. Education accultures individuals, modifies cultural process by research and deeper investigations into all areas of human requirements. Though culture fixes the framework of the personality of future citizens, it is to be conceived not as a fixed force. Culture is not static, but it is dynamic, as human life is. It is to be developed from time to time depending upon the social change, sociological developments, cultural needs, and national requirements. The impact of culture of other developing and developed nations on the development of culture of an underdeveloped nation is quite obvious. Education, an instrument for the development of cultural treasure, has to develop the personalities of all individuals with whom it is concerned to the optimum level as to enable them to contribute their best for cultural upliftment, advancement, and furtherance. Fourth, continuity of culture. Culture is the lifeblood of society. Without culture, a society is bound to decay and die sooner or later. Education upholds the continuity of culture through its diverse activities and programs. A society establishes schools to preserve and transmit its culture from generation to generation. It is found that some schools try to develop undesirable cultural chauvinism and superiority complexes among its children. Children should be motivated to learn more and more from cultural interaction among various cultures. Ideally, education should help them to develop the qualities of tolerance and adjustment, along with mutual give and take attitude. This cultural integration and cultural synthesis is the dire need of the world society in modern times. Fifth, development of common culture. It is the utmost duty of education system to provide education that tends to develop common culture. The content of education should be so developed as to foster the desirable goal of national integration. Hence, schools in the modern times are to be conceived as an instrument of dominant cultural value orientation. Regarding the importance of culture to individual development, this is observed that for each individual there occurs during his early development through contact with contemporary culture, assimilation of values, ideas, and more than bridge gap of several thousands of years. He becomes through this process an individual capable of living in a modern society. Thus, education and culture are mutually related. Culture determines the pattern and material for the education process. Education serves as an instrument for the transmission of cultural heritage. Now, let us conclude. An education system is the reproductive organ of every culture. Education includes both formal schooling and informal transmission of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Individual members of a society grow old and die, while new members are born and grow to maturity. Yet, a society's culture is a living entity which transcends all the society's individual members. A society's culture can survive for longer than the lifespan of any of its members because its educational system passes down the folkways and knowledge of one generation to subsequent generations. A culture changes over time but has a recognizable continuity of basic values and behavioral patterns that distinguishes it from other cultures. That continuity is provided by the education system. If an education system is altered, its transmission of culture will be distorted. The deliberate alteration of an educational system can be a very effective way to change a culture. This was all about the topic. Hope you have understood well. Thank you.